Hello, Helen here. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to do another card with this Wplus9 stamp called A Kind Soul, and I've been inspired to make this card by a packet of paints that I bought from our local department store in the craft section. They're very pearlized looking, and I thought I'd give them a go and see. I don't know how they're going to look, but I thought I'd give them a go, and I thought they'd be best on black card. So I'll start off with a black card base that's 5 by 7 inches and also a panel the same size, and I'm going to stamp with Versamark clear sticky ink, and then I'm going to use white embossing powder. I usually use my MISTI with this stamp because it's a really big stamp and I'm always worried that I'm going to miss parts of it, and I'm also going to be stamping partly off the card, so I'm going to make sure I can re-stamp it again if I have to. So I've laid my stamp out roughly where I think it needs to go, and I'm just checking with a stitched rectangle die that I thought I was going to cut the front panel down to, just seeing where it was going to sit before I stamped it. You'll see later that I changed my mind about that, but at the moment I'm just laying the stamp out ready for stamping. Stamping with white embossing powder on black card has always been a problem for me. I always get stray powder everywhere, so I'm being really liberal with the stamp embossing buddy, making sure that I get as little stray powder as I can. I still find when I do the actual heat embossing that little stray bits still flick out everywhere, but if I can eliminate as much as possible before I do the heat embossing, then it seems to reduce it. If anybody has any helpful suggestions on how to eliminate that, I'd be very grateful. I think it may be something to do with how I've decanted it into the container. I think maybe it's to do with static, but I'm not quite sure about that. Once I'm happy with getting all the little specks off, I can go ahead and heat with my heat gun, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing in the top right hand corner, just with slightly less of the stamp showing. Now this is where I discovered when I cut out my stitch rectangle out of it that it just looked way too small and I had cut way too much of the stamping off, so I ended up redoing it again and just trimmed it by hand about 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and that looked much better. I was much happier with that. And now just before I do the painting of my flowers, I'm going to stamp the sentiment on. So I'm using the Simon Says stamp called Thoughtful Messages, and I'm going to do the birthday. It's just such a lovely font, and then do the little sub-sentiment saying wishes, so it says birthday wishes. And I discovered when I was doing the sentiment that using this little embossing buddy pillow for the anti-static works so much better than the EK Success one that I was using. It puts a lot more of the dust out, so I didn't have nearly the same problems with the flying particles. I can just rub off the excess powder with a soft cloth and then it's ready for doing the painting. So I've just got a paintbrush and some clean water, and I'm just putting a bit of the water into the colours that I'm going to use and rubbing it around just to get the paint flowing, and then I'm going to start by painting all the leaves with both arrangements of flowers. I then just put a touch of a darker green on where the shadows would be, where the leaves are behind the flowers, etc. It didn't really show up that much, so I don't think that's entirely necessary. I think if you're just wanting just colour, then you don't really need to do that. I started painting the petal with one of the paler pinks in the palette, but it just turned out looking very silvery without looking pink, so I've ended up using a much brighter pink, and I've done a full coat of that on the larger of the flowers, and then I've gone back and used a darker pink just at the centre, radiating out into the petals, but again it didn't really show up that much, so it's not necessary to do that. I just can't leave things alone, I've got to fluff around with them. Now I did notice with these paints, I know they are cheap paints and they probably wouldn't do this with other metallic paints that you can get, but I found it did stick to the embossing that I'd done. I thought it would have resisted like other mediums do, but it actually covered the embossing completely, and I've ended up having to later on go back and go over the white in places, but it just means that it does cover the black quite nicely, so I suppose that is a good thing. Now I had planned to paint the smaller flowers a mauve colour for a change, but the mauve didn't stand out very well against the black either. It looked quite silvery, so I've ended up using blue, a paler blue and then a darker blue in the centre again. Once my painting was finished, I could put the panel onto my card base, but because I was painting on black card that isn't watercolour paint, it's ended up a little bit warped, so I'm going to do a full sticky on both sides of my craft foam just to make sure it makes it lay flat. So I'm using a adhesive sheet. We call it jack paper here, but I'm not sure what it's called in other countries, and I've just popped it on both sides of the craft foam and then sticking that down onto my card base. The final thing that I mentioned earlier was that I went over some of the areas where the paint had stuck to the embossing with a white gel pen, just to whiten it back up again, and that just seemed to brighten a little bit. I didn't have to do it for all of the card, and that's the card finished. I'll leave you with a photo of the card. At the end you'll also see two videos that you might be interested in watching. One of them's painting the same stamp set and the other one's my latest video. Subscribe, you can click on the image of me and subscribe to the channel and catch more videos that I'm going to be doing. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.